Welcome to another episode of So You Think You Can Doc. Today we have Christina, or Kris Penniston, and we're going to kind of walk through her life and see what that was like. So a lot of you have been tuning in to try to figure out what it's like to be a medical doctor, and sometimes it's really about the decision making about, is that the right place for you? What does that mean? What does it expose you to? And maybe there are some other choices in life that can get you to the things that you're actually looking for. So sometimes figuring out what you really want, it helps you get to where you want to be. And a lot of times, if you've seen any of the other episodes, the direction and the way you get there often isn't very straight. And people change their minds a lot. Some people get where they're going, and some people don't even know where they're going. So today, we're going to walk through a little bit of Kris's life, but how are you doing so far?
I'm okay. How are you?
Good. You know, it's really hot. We were just talking about July 4th and trying to figure out what we're going to do with our lives.
It's ridiculously hot. I remember my daughter's birthday's tomorrow, and she'll be 25. It was so hot that summer. So it's like this summer. I mean, I remember it vividly because I was not wanting to be pregnant much longer.
Yeah, and you know, this is, fortunately or unfortunately for you, you're the first woman on the show. Everybody else, you know, so we've avoided certain topips like
apparently.
Men do. Yeah, this is one of our talents.
Wow, I'm going to break you in
avoid
here.
responsibilities here.
Jeez. Jeez Louise.
So kind of like everybody else, I want you to just, you know, go back to where you were, right?
Yeah.
Like, so where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I might even tell you some things you don't know.
Yeah, if that's possible.
So I did grow up around Madison, which is where we are now. So in a small town, Belleville. It's near New Glarus, which a lot of people know because of the beer. So I'm not in New Glarus, but I'm near New Glarus. So that's always like our claim to fame. So yeah, I grew up there. Never thought I wanted to be in med school. Never ever thought about like a medical career at all, actually. But, you know, when I was in high school, that was a long time ago. You know, we didn't think, It wasn't like the preparatory things. I don't remember there was no tutors. I don't even know if we had a guidance counselor. Like, it was a very small school, and you know, so there was only a few of us that went to college in my small little school. And I went to UW-Madison. And again, I had no idea what I was going to do. So I majored in African American history, which was fabulous. And I learned about history that I never knew before. It was like learning American history for the first time. Literally, I never learned.
I'm going to take you back to that concept of never wanting to be like a physician in a second. I want to mention this. Ali Antar is here. This is my co-host and urologist who, you know, does surgery and has urgent things that come up as opposed to me. You know, so he's got his best shoes on today as usual.
Yeah, see that? Great hat.
And I don't want to, you know, I don't need to introduce him to Kris Penniston because, as you'll see, they already know each other quite well.
Yes.
But I do want to take you back to, you know, this. It was okay. I don't want to be a physician, but did you have that I don't want to work with people and their health, like in general, or is it just the healthcare field itself wasn't appealing to you?
So I'm gonna guess that I'm different than most of your audience right now listening, and certainly different than you guys. It wasn't even on my radar. I mean, like I said, most of my graduating class didn't go to college. And those of us that did, I don't remember anybody having like a plan other than those that knew they wanted to go like into accounting or business or something. And then like me, I just went into really for the experience. You know, I didn't have like a preset. I know nowadays in high school, you kind of have to know what you want to do. It wasn't like that when I was in school. I'm much older than you guys.
So you're going into college and you're just kind of like, hey, I want to be a person who went to college, right?
Kind of. It was like an experience. And I was very politically active. I was very involved in feminist things and anti-racism. And at that time, the draft had just been reinstated. So it was like hearkening back to kind of the old political days of the 60s and the 70s. We were very, you know, it was closer to that time than we are now. And so I kind of wanted the experience of, you know, UW-Madison, you know, I wanted to learn about politically, you know, political activism, things like that. So that's what I did. And I majored in African American history. And because like I said, I never had a plan. You know, some people in my class did. Usually it was business. I don't know of anybody in my class who went into medicine. Some people went into like teaching chemistry or something. But anyway, so I was in college and I got very politically active. And very involved in the anti-apartheid movement, because at that time there was still apartheid in South Africa. Nelson Mandela was still in prison. And there was this whole anti-apartheid movement that took over the country. This was like mid-'80s. And I was one of the leaders of the anti-apartheid movement here in Madison, and was actually flown by the CBS Morning News to New York to be interviewed by Maria Shriver, who worked for the CBS News at that time. She interviewed me and 3 other students about our activism, about our anti-apartheid activism. You didn't know that.
16 years.
That you've known me.
We've seen each other a minimum of 4
Every
hours
week.
a week.
My dad has it on an old VCR.
VHS.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
VHS. Because they have ways you can digitize it.
So he probably could. Yes, there is a record of it. So anyway, that's what I did for my, and then after college, I went into, what do you do with an African American history degree? I became a union organizer. Yeah. And then I got really sick. You probably didn't know this either.
No.
I got really sick. It turns out it was viral encephalitis. They didn't know what it was. For months, I had this bad neck pain, and I remember just saying, cut my head off, because I was always in pain. They thought it was stress. So I was like, I went to PT, and it kind of missed the boat, because by the time I had this acute event where I was in the ER, but preceding that, I had lost some vision. I was walking around. I became sort of immobile. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like gibberish, speaking gibberish. And I was taken by ambulance to the ER. And apparently I was really combative. That's something apparently that happens with encephalitis. I was like threatening to beat people up and stuff, which I never would do. But they, put me out or whatever. And then the, spinal tap or something, the white count was really high. Probably should have been diagnosed earlier. But anyway, I got really sick, and the recovery was like 6 months. And during that time, I quit my job, and I said I want to do something health-related. And that was the first time.
Okay, so this health incident kind of opened your eyes
Yeah.
to, I could help people in other ways, or was it?
I wanted to learn more about what was going on. And I never thought of med school, interestingly, because at that time I was a little older than, the typical med student is.
So you wanted to know what was going on, meaning you wanted to understand the healthcare system?
No, I wanted to understand my health.
Your health.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I felt like there were, I had quit my job, and I thought there must be opportunities, in the healthcare field. And I knew I didn't want to go to med school. I knew I didn't want to do nursing. And all of that would have been available to me. But that's when I selected nutrition.
What do you think it was that made you kind of trigger that I don't want to specifically do this or that? Was it the label of what those positions were, or was it the amount of school? I can't imagine, knowing what I know of you, which we'll get to. Sometimes it just stacks on you and sneaks up on you. Wow, I guess I've been in school a long time.
See, at that time in my life, and this is where I'm probably different than you and probably most of your audience, no one in my family was a physician. No one in my family went to college. My parents didn't go to college. I had an uncle who went to college. Actually, a couple of my father's sisters did go to college, but it wasn't in my repertoire.
From close friends and family, they're like, hey, why would you do that?
No. A lot of them were like, well, it's about time, because they had seen me as sort of like union organizer, what are you doing with your life? I thought that was perfectly fine. But so anyway, I suppose I would have thought med school or something like that had I known someone like that. No one I knew had ever done that.
So, some of your thoughts are a little different so most people are kind of in that situation, and they're thinking can I go to med school? Can I do this? Can I handle this? Right? Am I smart enough? Can I do this? Can I do that? Right? And again, what I know of you is a little biased, right? But I'm not hearing this, I wasn't sure if I could do it. It's more of I didn't want to do it.
That's a really great question. I was married at the time, and so I wasn't forced to get another job right away. I was able, privileged, able to take some time off. And I don't remember thinking that I couldn't do it. I don't remember those barriers. I just remember thinking, I remember thinking med school would be too long. And I felt like even though I was younger then, and if I was, looking back at myself now, I would tell myself, you got plenty of time. I know people older than you who have gone to med school. You don't think that? And I know your audience, if they're young people, they think they don't have any time. Stop that, because you've got plenty of time.
Yep.
I mean,
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And some of the things you're commenting on are actually what we're getting at. The people who don't have people in their family or this, that, and the other. I've mentioned this a million times, but my wife is the perfect example, right? She grew up in a family that had nothing to do with
Kind of like
medicine.
mine, small town.
Yeah, and she didn't know any, and
Right.
she didn't have those people to reach out to
Right.
or support her.
Role models.
Yeah. There was, if anything, she was told the opposite.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do this.
Aha.
Right? So, guidance counselors, etc.,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. While you were probably told, oh, you feel sick, you're just a, hysterical woman. And meanwhile, you're getting, encephalitis.
Yeah.
Well, too. So within yourself, it sounds like you weren't like, hey, I can't handle this. You probably knew people who did it or went that route at that point after you
Yes.
were already in UW.
Yes.
And thinking like, oh, they can do it. I
Right.
certainly could. It's just, I don't want to. And it sounds like you were kind of buying into probably the roles you've seen all your life, which, okay, I'm married, this and the other. If I do this, I'm like, okay, well, this is not going to fit or work out.
Yeah.
Right?
I definitely thought of the time that it would take to do med school. And I had this already underlying interest for the last couple of years, even before I was sick, in nutrition. I was kind of intrigued by, the fact that, because I didn't learn this in high school. We didn't have biochemistry in my high school. We didn't have, I was kind of intrigued by the fact that, hey, what I eat actually kind of does play a role in my health. And maybe to recuperate better, maybe I really do need to pay attention more to what I'm eating. Not that I had been unhealthy prior to that incident or anything, but I had that underlying interest. And then it just seemed, if I was going to go back to school and if I was going to do something health related, kind of with the idea that there was a sure job in that area.
Job security.
Nutrition seemed reasonable to me. And I didn't know any dietitians. I didn't know anyone who did nutrition. Was not thinking at that time of a PhD at all, which is what I ended up doing, but I wasn't thinking that at all. But I did then go back to school. I had a bachelor's degree, it was a BA, but I decided to go back to school. And so I went to Madison College just to get the credits I needed to be eligible for a residency or an internship in nutrition.
So talk about that a little bit. How long is that? Like, what is that process like?
Well, because I had the bachelor's degree already, I would not have needed to get a BS or any new bachelor's degree. I ended up getting a BS just because I had a BA. And so by the time it took me to take all the classes and the science and stuff that I needed, which I had never taken, my high school stopped at, we didn't have calculus until I was a senior. It was just very small school, a long time ago. So by the time I got all the credits out of the way, I almost had a BS, and so I took like 1 or 2 extra courses to get the BS. Learned I was really good at chemistry. Like, I had no idea. I didn't even know I'd like it, but I loved it. And I loved chemistry, and I wasn't taking nutrition at this point, but I knew then that then I transferred to UW-Madison, where I had already gotten a bachelor's degree, but to get, finish the bachelor's of science degree and get eligible to be a nutritionist, I realized I really liked it.
In jiu-jitsu, they've got belts, and then within the belt there are degrees. But there's always this desire to I got to get to the next, right? And so was there some of that in there too? That's just this calling I can still step it up. Oh, I can step it up even more. Let's see how far we can step it. What's the limit on this?
I never had that before, but I think that's when it started.
That's
what you're describing.
Yeah.
When I realized that I could get another degree, another bachelor's degree, if I just took a few more courses, I was like, why don't I just do that? I kind of began to like that idea of that achievement and that attainment and the sense of accomplishment that it gave me. And then, that's when I first began to feel it. I hadn't been motivated that way academically before. Musically, I had competed in piano and clarinet through high school and stuff. And so I had that bug bite me. But for academics, I didn't really know that until I learned I'm really good at this stuff. And it felt good. Mm-hmm. And then getting the bachelor's degree and then looking at the next step, which was to become a dietitian. Then I had to get an internship, which is kind of like a residency, but it's much more abbreviated than a medical residency. But I also applied to grad school at the same time. And that's when I was accepted to both. And I accepted the internship first, reasoning that I could defer grad school and be a dietitian already by the time I entered grad school, which it turned out to be very fortuitous because that's what I did. I did the dietetic internship, did the test, became a registered dietitian. Then the next year started grad school. And because I was already a dietitian, I made an arrangement with my professor. I was in a bench basic science lab to excuse me every Tuesday afternoon for 4 hours. And I would come in Saturday mornings to make up for the time so that I could be the dietitian in the Stone Clinic at University Hospital.
But that was that, hey, I need to make some money on the side, or is this, or maybe both, or this is what I like doing and this is why I wanted to do it and I want to practice it? or is it I don't want to lose my craft kind of thing?
By that time, I knew I wanted to be a dietitian. And so definitely was wanting that experience to start accumulating as of grad school, because I knew grad school would take me at least, I didn't know I was going to get a PhD, but for the master's, I thought maybe 3 years. Turned out it was closer to 6 because I got a PhD. But by that time, I could say I was a dietitian for 6 years. And I could use the money. I mean, I was married, he was making good money, but I felt good to be able to earn some bucks,
And why the master's?
Because I knew that if you were going to be a dietitian in an academic center, you needed a master's degree. Now it's required. As of this year, actually, if you want to be a dietitian and practice anywhere in the U.S., you have to not only have a bachelor's degree and an accredited internship, and now also an MS degree. When I went, you didn't have to have the MS, but you did if you wanted to be at an academic center. And I knew I was going to stay in Madison, Wisconsin, and practice here.
Okay, there's the location, there's Madison, right? But there are people who go private versus academic, right? And you already had an academic mindset.
I guess I did.
Right?
I think it was the internship, which I had done at the university hospital, which made me realize that academia was a good fit for me. It never crossed my mind to do private practice.
Do you think it was because the people or the environment or your desire to teach others?
By that time, I had begun to be very interested in research and reading. And then that just got even more magnified in grad school. Because I was in grad school to get an MS, and then she said, well, if you stay another year and a half or 2 years, you'll get a PhD. And I was like, okay. Literally, that's what it was. Because my PhD was a full ride. Most people, your audience probably doesn't know this. If you get a PhD in a scientific field, it's probably going to be paid for. Most people think that they're paying for a PhD, but if you go into a science field, at least that used, in the before times, you could count on that. It's all paid for. So I was earning, a little bit of money as a PhD, candidate or, student. And then, learning that I was interested in academia all the while I was in grad school.
And why the stone climb?
It's what was available, which is the shocking thing. So yes, it turns out that's what I do now is specialize in that. But I didn't know it at the time. I just wanted to say that I was practicing as a dietitian, and knowing that I was going to spend some years in grad school, I wanted to be able to say that I had accumulated these years of experience as a dietitian. And so when I approached the clinical nutrition, they said, well, we have this one thing open on Tuesday afternoons. It's part of a team. You'll be the dietitian with a couple of nephrologists, and they do kidney stone prevention. That's what I did. I studied something completely different for my PhD. And I was still thinking, even up until the last day, that I would still go and do a postdoc in vitamin A, because that's what I was researching. But by that time, I had become fascinated with the clinical nutrition thing and stones. And at that time, there wasn't a whole lot of nutritional research in kidney stones. You can go back in PubMed and go look at that time and type in nutrition and kidney stones, and you'll see this many papers. And then 10 years later, this many papers. So I knew, I had the feeling that I was coming into it at a critical time. And I thought I could make a contribution.
So there's a lot going on and a lot of movement that took place there. There are a couple of other things that you mentioned, but so did the activism disappear?
Not completely. So I was still active. South Africa gave up apartheid, so we won that battle. Not just because of me, but But no, I was still politically active in things, but it had really taken a downturn. It was no longer the center, and it was just kind of things I do on the side.
And music?
I still play piano, and so I still play for weddings and funerals and church services. I sub at different churches, and it's a little side gig. Yeah, it's actually pretty good money.
In that pursuit, to the next level, do you feel like the music helped you at all in any way, shape, or form, in terms of keeping you going or keeping you fueled, kind of getting your mind in the right space or anything like that?
No, but I'll tell you what, music helped me learn how to learn. I realize now, and I see it in my daughter, who also played piano very well, because I knew how to practice, I knew how to learn. Because when you're really good at piano, and I play difficult repertoire, I'm accomplished, but it takes a lot of work to get there. Mm-hmm. So in my day, it might be spending an hour on 2 measures, playing it over and over 50 times. I knew how to do that. And I think that's what made me good at chemistry and some of those things that other students that I was with, they were all like, can I read your paper or can I copy your paper? Because I learned how to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to me now.
I think that's one of the greatest things. We always say doctors are supposed to be lifelong learners.
Yeah.
Right? And like, there has to be a love for that feeling of learning. I put in a lot of effort into making myself good at something or obtaining a new skill, and then feeling that same, for me, getting to the next level now in terms of titles and degrees and things like that, it's not as satisfying to me as like, oh, I learned something new.
Yeah.
Right?
See, now you're hooked.
Yeah. And so like, it's amazing that music could play such a big role for you there. Because I'm trying to make music an intentional aspect of the way I teach surgery now. Because nobody taught me how to teach.
But you must have learned, so you're good at what you do. I feel like, I know there's a lot of doctors who are musicians. So I know that must be a commonality. But I feel like if you're not, there must have been something for you and there must have been something for you.
Yeah.
That made you a good learner.
For me, I think it was reading.
Just reading? Just
reading. Because learning how to read, and like now I'm teaching my kids how to read, and I'm realizing, it actually is pretty amazing, the number of letters that we take. Because I'm having to teach them. I'm trying to teach them how to read in Arabic.
So cool. Yeah. My daughter's learning Arabic.
Yeah, fantastic.
Because her girlfriend is Muslim. So.
Yeah, but like the idea of knowing a different language and like two separate alphabets, I think was a really big thing. And I think that's the thing about music, is that it's like a whole other part of your brain.
It's a whole language.
And it opens up this whole other way of seeing things and approaching problems and things like that. So,
were you raised bilingual?
No, I was raised, we only spoke English in the house. We learned Arabic for religious reasons.
So you learned it?
I learned it, but not like in a conversational, because there's conversational language, the way that we're speaking now. And then it's like, I think one of my favorite things is to go back and watch videos like Richard Feynman or these science lectures, these other like PhDs, like real stuff. And they have this like switch and it's like, okay, now we're going to get into this very formal English. And some of that formality of like a formal version of a language and conversational. So I learned a very formal Arabic without really learning a very common conversational Arabic.
But that formal learning is what prepared you probably for the learning that you're describing.
The English I spoke when I was a kid, everybody knew this about me, that I was just like that. They called me a grammar Nazi.
Very, very particular.
Very particular, especially.
I love that. I think I'm also a grammar Nazi.
Yes, you are.
I didn't know that about you.
But the idea is that like instant messaging was coming out, and so like even now when I write a text and I'm writing it to an attending. So when I was a resident, you have to text attendings all the time. And whenever I was texting and attending, I would make sure that I had perfect English.
Commas, capital letters.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I realized that they never read any of it. And I was asking my coworkers, I was like, what kind of text do you use? And I'd look at it, and they were just like, they understood that?
Yeah. It looks like my text.
Oh, God.
So, but back to the main idea was music. It's one of those things that, like, I picked up guitar in high school. I never really got good at it. And it was one of those ones where getting a good skill with my hands, like, that really added to something else. Because when I wrote my personal statement for urology, it was about music.
I hear that surgeons who are musicians often are good surgeons because of that tactile.
I think there are studies on it.
Really?
There's one study that might be more relevant in terms of physical damage, because of my day, like when I operate now, I know most people think surgeons, like, if they're looking into a body. I look at a scrreen now.
Yeah.
And it's like video games.
Video games.
And there was that study. Did we talk about this study?
I've heard about it.
You've heard about it.
Margaret's told me about it too.
That having played video games correlated with faster learning of surgery. Or better surgical. We'd have to find the paper. It was very nebulous.
I believe it.
But the same way that for you learned how to learn that way.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of crazy that, I got good at playing all these multiple video games with my brothers. And now when I go to work every day, it's like, all right, it feels like we're plugging into PlayStation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
Margaret has the Xbox controller. She actually has an Xbox controller.
She does.
Yeah, she does. On the Monarch, that new device.
Yeah.
It's a new device, the robotic surgery, and getting into all those kinds of things. And that's all talking about like next level. But I think one of the things I brought this book with me because it was one of these things that we had talked about, the canon of medicine, and how being a dietitian is probably, when you think of what doctors were in the original sense of the term, taking care of people, that was the first place they would start. So what are you eating?
It's true.
And that's a hard process, because I remember being with you guys in clinic and then sitting with you, and sometimes when you were teasing away, and only a handful of times because, gosh, the thing was busy. But when you start teasing away and you start pulling layers back on certain people, like, hey, what are you eating? Most people don't even remember.
No.
Right? And then you think about Instagram and the way that people's relationship with food is so celebratory. It's like, oh, we're going to make a post. So, but regulating that and teaching people a good relationship with food, I think is one of the most original callings of being a doctor. And so it's a key pillar of the clinic. And I still we had this idea for MINT, remember?
Yes.
Innovative nutrition therapy.
Yeah.
But I'm always telling people the same 3 pieces of advice. And I don't change it after that.
Well, and you're a surgeon. So, this is where the team, part of it comes, we specialize. And so we have a team so that we're each contributing our specialty to it. When I was, one of the things I didn't like about dietetics and still, is the behavioral and the emotional aspect of it. I would much rather, sometimes, just be talking about the mechanisms and the metabolic, because what you just said is so true. Food, when it turns, when you want to talk about it, turns out it's very personal for people. It can be, religious. It can be cultural. It can be tied into their emotions. And there's judgment. There's fear of judgment, expectations. Oh, yeah. And people have different views and different opinions.
Yeah, people get really defensive.
Yeah.
We're always taught to double or triple the alcohol admitted, intake and stuff like that.
Yeah. Cigarettes.
Nobody says the right.
No, and you understand why when it because they perceive us as being judgmental. Absolutely. And I guess to some extent we are, but that wasn't the part of nutrition that attracted me. It was the learning, all the metabolism stuff, all the biochemistry. I loved that stuff. I still do.
So, here you are, you're doing the Stone Clinic and you're in grad school, right?
And I had a baby.
And the baby.
Yeah.
Okay. So where exactly would Eve had fit into that?
Yeah.
Like what year?
So I started grad school 1999 and she was born 2000. So it was right at the end of my first year of grad school. And I was my professor's first graduate student, which has pluses and minuses. The pluses was she didn't know what she was, what to expect, really. And I knew the system really well. I'd been at UW, already had earned 2 degrees, so I kind of knew the lay of the land and could help her find resources and things. But she was very understanding, and she, let me take, time off, a couple of months off, and, do the pumping. I brought my breast pump in and was able to do that. She created a little space for me outside of the lab to do that. So I was lucky in that regard. So, but I was married, and so I had help, and my family lived nearby, so I had a lot of support for those early days. Because then I went, right back into the lab, and because I was really liking it, and I really liked the basic science, and it was kind of a touch and go for me. Do I do a postdoc in vitamin A? Because I was clearly being prepped for that, or boy, I'm really loving the Stone Clinic stuff. And even though it's only once a week, I'm learning so much because your predecessors, the 2 older gentlemen that were nephrologists, were so generous with me, with their knowledge. I mean, I felt like they treated me like one of their students. And even Richard Rieselbach, he used to love it when he would bring in like a fellow or a student and he would ask me a question and I would know the answer and he would always gloat about that. I think he felt some kind of, ownership over my knowledge at that point, but I didn't mind, because he was very proud of me. But they were just so generous with their knowledge of me, and I couldn't have asked for a better education. And I was kind of hooked at that point. And then comparing, the realizing that there was room for nutritional research in kidney stones, and thinking that I could be kind of at the cusp of that. And then Steve Nakata walked in, and who I'd always kind of seen once a week there, sort of peripherally. And he said, well, I got your PhD now. I suppose you're going to leave. And I said, well, I was thinking of a postdoc, and I don't know. He says, well, what if I could create a position for you as scientist in the Department of Urology? And I'm like, what? That wasn't on my radar. But that's opening another door that was only able to go into because I got the PhD, and I had demonstrated interest in stones. And he, unbeknownst to me, was already aware that maybe there was a role for nutrition in kidney stones. And he wanted to be the first department chair who hired a nutrition scientist, and he was.
I'm going to rewind for a minute because I want to. I know you. I also know the way you can kind of frame things. So, and you mentioned it briefly, but a door didn't open. You created the door, right? And you can say oh, other people were, finding this and this works out and, crediting them and this, that, and the other. Think about the steps you're taking and how it mirrors who you are now. You were the first graduate, for that, but you were laying the land and you kind of knew how to find resources. You were already helping, supporting, and creating careers.
Yeah.
Even from that stage of grad school.
Yeah. Right. Because my professor was new, she wanted to do swine work and she didn't know anyone here. So I'm the one who started the connection between her and Tom Crenshaw, who who is the head of the swine research here and who I did some graduate school work with and then subsequently again. But yeah, I think maybe it was because I was the oldest child or something. I think I've always been creating things.
So, I mean, it sounds like, we're just talking about some random things, but for a minute, take a step back and picture, okay, here's somebody who's just finished their RD, has worked a little bit clinically, is in grad school, and now hear that they're creating connections
Yeah.
and starting a swine lab and hooking people up, and try and find someone like that.
You're right. I look back on it, I had a lot of confidence in myself, but I guess I did. I guess that's always been what I've done. I was a leader of the anti-apartheid movement here. I was, always kind of creating opportunities.
I'm emphasizing this because I'm not sure that you recognize, even if you have subconsciously or whatever it is, right? But these are huge things. Like, you created these things.
Yeah.
It sounds like, oh yeah, they were generous with their knowledge. You were receptive of their knowledge. You amplified their knowledge. Do you think they really understood anything nutritionally? They stood on generalities.
Unfortunately, I tried, but
right. Validated their comments, but more salt or this, like, you validated that for them, even though I know the guys you're talking about, and they're significantly older, and I don't know that they'd be admitting, what they've learned from you is what I'm getting.
Yeah, right. Well, now that's a doctor thing.
Yeah.
We haven't talked much about you. No, I get what you're saying. You do have to, whatever you do, you have to, create, you have to have some sort of a sense of creating a path for yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be, one of those that, just sort of sits back and does what they need to do to get by. You're not like that. You're not like that. And I'm not like that. And so we've distinguished ourselves already by becoming who we are.
Right, and you're certainly not getting by. You're now creating, right? Because we can put the names on whoever started this or started that. There is no this or that without you as the machine that created it, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about Stone Clinic. Obviously, I'm involved in it, and Ali is. But what is that?
I couldn't believe I liked it. Those 4 hours a week, and I came in every Saturday morning to make up the time. I was very religious about that, but I enjoyed it, and I couldn't believe that I did. Because I thought I was just, filling a spot, because that's kind of how it was pitched to me. But it turned out I liked the kidney. Didn't know that. It didn't really study the kidney. But it turns out I liked, it's responsible for acid-base metabolism. Well, you're a nephrologist.
Yeah. No, I'm laughing because my story of why did I gravitate to the kidney is chemistry based. So
similar.
I didn't know, how you had that chemistry experience. So that's not surprising.
I think, that's probably that was the thing that. Yeah, so I became interested in that, and then had no knowledge of the urinary system at all, and became interested in how the urine could be a biomarker, and then just then learning all of the comorbidities and the metabolic processes, because we see, as you know, the most complex patients. So even in the early days of the Stone Clinic, Steve started in 1995. Can you believe that?
Wow.
I know. I came in 1999, but learning that, of course, because we were seeing the complicated patients, then I became to appreciate all those systemic diseases and their impact on the processes that create kidney stones. And then couple that with, nutrition doesn't play a role in all kidney stones, but there is a role for nutrition in some cases and in some ways. And so that, again, it all came together for me, and it just really felt natural.
But here you're talking about these complex patients. Madison is basically one of two cities of Wisconsin. People are coming from hours away. You are the end all. It's a lot of pressure, right? Here you're the stone prevention nutritionist that people have come from wherever. Do you recognize who you are or where you stand at an early time, right? You're here and they've seen other nutritionists.
Yeah.
Right? These patients. And now they're coming to see you in the Stone Clinic. And are you feeling like, hey, so what did that other nutritionist say to you? Or...
I think you've seen me evolve, because I think now I do that. I think, 10 years ago, maybe not. I've been doing this, 25 years, really, because since 1999. Early on, no, I don't think I felt that way, but I do now. And I realize that, it took a while, but I realized that this is a specialty. It's a special niche, and that not everybody knows or has had the ability to learn the things that we've learned. So I do appreciate and recognize that it's very specialized, and that I'm one of the very few.
Yeah, and I know right now, pretty clearly that most people are ill-informed or misinformed or whatever it is. But back then, to have the confidence to overrule other people?
Yeah.
Or were you relying on the physicians to agree with you?
No, I think I always had confidence. And that's great at both a plus and a minus.
Yeah.
Because I think that rubs people sometimes the wrong way. But definitely that was it's been part of my success.
Yeah, and that's great. Most people don't have that, right? And they need to like nurture it or grow it or get it from feedback or whatever else.
Plus, I'm around surgeons, and they all have that.
Yeah.
So, because I'm in the Department of Urology, I had to learn. I always say I learned how to do surgeon speak because I learned how to speak quick and concise and get to the point right away. And powerful, and I have to sound like I know what I'm talking about because otherwise they're not going to listen to me. And I learned that quickly. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the most foundational things, learning that in medical school, I think. And I think that's one of the interesting places to return back to like some of the but when students are choosing between medicine and surgery, you'll start noticing, the ones that can pick up the code, the surgeon code, is something my wife talks about a lot. Code switching. Because in my eyes, it's a form of code switching.
Code switching meaning people that can pass for someone else, or
that can see the same
adapt.
Things and adapt. So like in music, right, you can see the notes in a form and in a time, right?
Yep.
So but you can switch your perception from one form of attacking a problem to another.
Yep.
And so my wife is Ho-Chunk. And so the way that they speak English at home is very different than the way they speak English here at the university, right? It's a bit more formal. And the same thing happens even, when I was going from my home to like when I would go to school. And the first time I realized that I was able to start putting on that different, like, oh, okay, I know how to speak in this specific context.
Yes, totally get it.
And so you were able to like flourish in this, in this fertile ground.
I'm a code switcher. Because you're describing exactly how I feel sometimes.
Yeah. And it's a good thing. You have to be able to, because like when I'm speaking with a patient, it's very different than when I'm speaking with a resident.
Yes.
And I hope that isn't a bad term or anything else like that.
You're so right. Like Tom Steele, I love the man, he's gone now, but he could not do that. He could speak one way and one way only. You know this about him.
Yeah.
And so patients were like, who is that guy? I can't even talk to him. Many patients, he didn't have that ability.
Yeah.
Which I think what you're describing, it can make you successful. It can differentiate you from others.
Even as I would imagine as a dietitian speaking with patients, there are some patients that if you speak to them too formal, they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And if you bring it back to where they fall, and I think that's one of the most important things about communication and learning. And I think, in the Stone Clinic, that's why, like, even right now, I'm getting like memories to being a fellow.
Being hanging around us. He does it really well. Ellen does it really well.
Yeah, well, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, I code switch heavy.
He is really good with patients. I can hear him.
Yeah.
You do adapt very well.
And I think and we've kind of mentioned this before, the whole like concept of AI and blah, 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 and what to do is slowly becoming less and less relevant because eventually we'll know what to do. But how do you communicate that with your patients or they get them to trust you? Or
AI will never be able to do that, right?
Right. I mean, that's what we're thinking. If a robot was like, whatever, you can have a nice voice, doesn't matter. It's like, you're not going to trust it, right?
Right.
So it's like having that conversation and then going into the imperfections and bargaining, right? Like, so when you're talking to somebody, you're creating a priority list of this, that, and the other. You're not trying to get all of these things right. You're trying to figure out what's most important and how does that fit into your life? And you can say like, okay, well, this is a good substitution of a food for this and this and the other. That's all fine and that's all true. But there's some X factor when you're talking to that person and relating to them and knowing which city in Wisconsin they came from and how they grew up and whatever it is, where you're modifying your recommendations, or maybe not even the actual recommendation, but the way it sounds and the way it's delivered. And that's the reason why they're coming back to see you. That's the reason why they're actually going to do it. I don't even know how to quantify that or, like put your finger on it.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how anybody could write an AI program that would even touch it.
It's not enough and that's important for anyone who wants to do anything in this field. It's not enough just to know what to do or what's wrong. You also have to know, or at least want to know, how to convey it and how to manage patients. Because no matter what we do, unless you're a pathologist sitting in a basement somewhere, you're going to be dealing with patients, right?
Yeah. Or diagnostic radiologist.
Or radiologist.
But you have to deal with patients.
Yeah. And that's what I think you got to bring to the table. And maybe my strength was in the, the metabolic part. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I have to, say this or do this. But you have to at least embrace that. Some people love that. But if you don't love it, you have to cultivate it at least. And you have to be willing to do it and recognize that it's part of the package. Yeah. And oftentimes it's going to be the maker or breaker of success.
And it's a good point, right? So looking for something or finding something you're going to love to do and enjoy 100% of the time does not exist, right? So it's bargaining with yourself of how much of the things I don't enjoy versus the things I enjoy. Okay, this is an okay, acceptable mixture for me because the enjoys are strong enough or, numerous enough that it's a win and I'll take it, right? And that's a balance that only you can really decide.
And
right?
the days of a doctor just being able to say, this, do this, they're gone, right? And same with dietitian and other, that's what I would like to do.
Yeah.
Actually, I would like to just do that. But that's not how you stay in a job. It's not how you love a job. I mean, you're going to hate it after a while if you just do that. So I think you have to be willing to embrace that. And I now view it as a challenge and something to learn better of and an opportunity. I just looked at my patients for tomorrow, actually, and I got some really complex ones I got to talk to you about. But I'm kind of like chomping at the bit about it a little bit because I'm excited. They're all different. Each one requires a different, thing. Approach, but I'm kind of excited about it.
And Ali, I'm guessing you're not feeling that. Just in the background, how long have you been out?
Since
second
graduate. This is my second year.
After endourology.
Yeah, this is my third year now after fellowship.
Right. And at that point you want to see easy. Like you want to see like these patients on this list or these procedures that I know how to do and I'm confident with and this, that, and the other, where now I'm kind of entertained by, the medical assistant rooms the patient and they walk out. I had a couple of them today actually walk out and they're just like, oh man, this is, and then I'll say, I'll throw some more fire onto some gas on it. I'll just say like, yeah, and their labs are hard and things are just, and I'm
you're
going to break
excited.
this news. And I'm thinking like, I'm going to walk out of there. This patient is going to be like so on board and with it. And I'm not even going to tell them like any feedback. They're like, oh yeah, but I'm going to be walking out of there with my head high, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm going to win.
Yeah, I like
that. Right? And I wasn't like that when I started. Now I'm just like, I can beat this.
Yeah, I mean, as it is right now, I look at the practice as 3 rings, like rings inside of rings inside of rings. And so the outermost ring would be the clinic, right? Because it's the furthest away from the center of like physical intervention. This is just from a surgeon's lens, right? Because at the center is the operating room. Right?
I was wondering what the center was.
And then the ring around the outside would be the hospital, and then the ring on the outside, that's the clinic. So even from a geographic sense, kind of the clinic kind of surrounds because you have outreach clinics and things like that. And that's because your idea is you're connecting to the patients in a place outside of the physical intervention kind of thing. And I have a love for every ring. I love hospital urology. I love operative.
You
urology.
like people.
I like solving a problem.
You're not the typical surgeon. You are very much surgeon-like in many ways.
He has a book.
That's why I this morning the grand rounds was trauma. It was upper urinary tract trauma.
And you loved it.
And I loved it because in my bag there are 2 bags I keep in my book. There's 2 bags. There's 2 books I keep in my bag at all times right now. The first one is called Power of Education. That's by a guy named Michael Apple. And then the second one is Top Laser. It's like Top Knife. My idea for a book is called Top Laser.
It sounds like Top Gun.
Exactly. That's what he called it after because he viewed his job as like a pilot.
He's a surgeon?
Ken Maddox. Yeah, Dr. Maddox. I shouldn't say his name. They worshipped him at Baylor.
Is he a neurologist?
He is a trauma surgeon. And so we were talking about kidney trauma. She was talking about how you manage like a shattered kidney because I'm post-renal and all that kind of stuff. And I immediately said, Ken Maddox talks about this. And I pulled my book out and I was like, I can't. I'm so thankful.
In the rounds?
In the grand rounds, because Dr. Emily, she was giving the lecture about it. And it's a fantastic book. And what I was getting at is this idea that he's at the center. So we were talking a lot about, and that's why I carry books around all the time. It helps me organize my thoughts and keep everything in order. I do, and in that sense, I'm not a typical surgeon, right? Because which of the urologists?
Yeah, I don't think any, actually.
It's just me. It's literally just me. But I love all 3 rings.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go to medical school thinking I was going to become a urologist. I went to medical school thinking I'd become a doctor. And the doctor should be able to operate in all 3.
Yeah.
Right? Or at least if you can operate in all 3, or if you should operate in all 3, because to become a master of the center, I mean, that's a very small circle relative to the hospital. It's a bigger circle relative to the clinic. So to be the master of the clinic, I mean, it's a lot of moving pieces. And there's a lot of my colleagues are not really, they don't look at the clinic room the way that they look at the operating room.
No.
Right? Because like, hey, we're going to be the master of the operating room. Not a lot of them thinking like, hey, let's be the master of the clinic.
I think for the most part, most surgeons are leaning towards how can I replace the clinic In other words, hire
Yeah.
APPs.
Yeah.
So I don't exist in that circle whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then my circle's just kind of,
But
just a little bullseye.
and I'm just getting in that. I just want to operate. Every day I come in, I just want to do the one.
There's a lot of surgeons like that, right?
Yeah. And for good reason. And because some surgeries require a lot of years of mastery to be able to do that one thing. But I think it's the one of the other things they talk about in the operating room is that you should be a master of the disease, right? And so that means that once they leave the operating room, you should know where they're going next and then where they're going to go for follow-up and that kind of thing. And so that's the thing about teaching somebody urology. Like, how do you define a urologist as separate from a surgeon or from a physician or from a medical doctor? Dietitian is separate from, and nephrologist is separate from a surgeon. That kind of thing.
What I've seen in 25 years in hanging around urologists, I mean, I always tell people, I still remember the days when I could go to an AUA meeting, that's American Urological Association meeting, and there would be no other women in the bathroom. Now, that's changed over the years, thankfully. Now I see other women in the bathroom, but literally, it's been a very, so I've seen a lot of changes. And one change I've seen is that there are more urologists now than ever before who are interested in the metabolic, who are interested in the medical and the chemistry or the metabolism stuff than before. And that's what I especially like about endourologists, because that's kind of who I have most related to. But I've met all kinds of other urologists. And I always say endourologists are the smartest urologists. I mean that because in my experience, they're the ones who are taking up the slack for the lack of nephrologists who are interested in stones, for the lack of other physicians who know about stones. They're taking up that slack. They're bothering to learn about the kidneys, about metabolism, about the gut. And that's above and beyond the typical surgeon. But I think that that's what makes an excellent surgeon versus a good surgeon. And that's why I think endourology is strong. It's very smart people.
And you've been through a lot of them.
I've been through a lot of urologists.
No, I mean, even endourologists specifically, like
all of our fellows. I've been since the very first fellow. We've had almost 20 now, I think.
I think so, yeah.
And you were one of them.
That was a great year.
I've been through a lot of urologists and met a lot of them at meetings and so forth.
There's this evolution that's taking place with you, right? So you're here, you've got these two older guys who are kind of, giving you some knowledge about this medical world. You're giving them some knowledge about the dietary world, and you're also teaching.
And then you came and I got to teach you what they knew and what I learned from them.
Right, yeah, and it continues there. But even before that, you're teaching these urology residents who are now willing to do an extra, at that time, 2 years
fellows,
to do endourology.
Yeah.
And now you're teaching them, and they're coming in as MDs who finished their residency, right? And you're a PhD at this point, and you have the RD. And how do you feel in that environment? Early on, I'm talking about.
Yeah, right. That's a good question. I remember Steve Nakata would always tell me, Kris, you know more than you think you know. And I would be like, really? I mean, I love teaching, and I loved being able to teach new things and see the eyes open and stuff. But I think there was a part of me that didn't really think I knew that much or that I was that valuable. And Steve would always say, you know a lot more than. And then one time he said to me, Kris, when you talk about the gut, our eyes just like glaze over. And I'm like, what? How can that be? You're a surgeon. Why? How come you don't know the digestive system? And he's like, we don't, Kris. We don't. You got to explain it in a more simple way. And I'm like, that's when I realized that what I knew was complicated and that I knew more than I thought and that I knew more than others did. And that's when I really began to realize how specialized we are and what value I brought versus what you bring and what you bring, and really embrace the team, aspect of it all. But yeah, I've seen a lot of urologists.
We're hitting some deep veins. They're calling me away for a case.
Of course.
I'm so sorry.
Of course.
But that's the way I came in. I'm going to put this down so I don't steal it.
He's always coming and going, and now he's leaving again, and geez. Don't forget your books.
I stole that last time. So
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
We didn't have any parenting tips for him.
Is he looking for parenting tips?
He always makes a comment of half of why I do this is so I can learn how to be a better parent when I start telling him about something
I'm guessing
about
he's a great.
kids.
I'm guessing he's a great dad.
Yeah, I mean, just his energy,
I know.
level, and I'm sure he's doing just fine. But it's all new, and the lack of sleep is next level. Like everything you've done before kids is like, I stayed up late and studied. Wow, I crammed this. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's no off switch.
Yeah.
It's 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? You don't get that okay, and now we're done, right?
I
Like,
know.
no, that's not a thing. So, all right,
True.
so here we are. We're in the Stone Clinic. Maybe I'm here now, right? It's 2010.
Yeah.
And now I'm here, I'm part of it, and things are rolling. You're telling me about everything, the history of it. I'm a new grad from nephrologist as opposed to urologist, so you haven't really gotten one of those as a new grad, right? And I'm learning that stuff. I came with very little experience, but the last couple of years,
you had enthusiasm. I always felt bad for you. Because no, seriously, because you had to deal with me. And I look back on it, and even at the time I remember thinking, God, he must think I am just like a jerk or something, like I want to control everything. Because I think I was always this is how we do it, or this is how they did it. And I just remember thinking, in retrospect, what a great guy you were that you took all that. You never once said, could you shut up or could you stop or something? You just sucked it all in. And I always appreciated that.
So I think, at least in my mind, I'm thinking like, maybe you're projecting some of that you felt like, oh yeah, I was soaking it in, right?
I know
Steele
you
was
were.
I was still there. We were all,
but sometimes I felt bad for you that I was there, that I, was so confident, and I knew so much, and I felt like, did I leave you room to?
When I interviewed, like I knew,
Yeah.
wow, like you exist. Steve Nakata exists. Like this was like a great opportunity with experts that I'm walking into. So that's the way I felt. So I never felt like, I mean, my opinion is just like, we all fake, we know nutrition, but we don't, right? But I was very open about admitting it. Right?
Yeah.
So I never took it as like, oh yeah, wow, she thinks she knows everything. The same way I'm sure, Nakata or Tom Steele never felt for a second like, bashful about what they knew or saying, right? So and I think it's like, it's that whole thing where, remember when like we had a couple of medical students who would like talk over you, and then the patients would listen to them or whatever. It's that whole thing where like, if a MD says it, it's gonna like, obviously you know more, but it's how do you navigate that, right? And not step on too many toes. But there's another part of you that I kind of want to get into. So I'm there. Things are kind of going along. We did some really cool projects together, some research. We started that group visits. That was a big thing about, getting people in. And we were able to work as a team, which I think helps a lot because we were able to like address 10 patients at once. And that was all great stuff that we had working together. But there was let's take a little step back before we get into kind of the bigger changes in your life and career. But there's still Eve, right?
Yeah.
Tacking along, and you've got to make sure like her life works out, and you're trying to spread out into this huge career. Research is a little different from other jobs, right?
There's travel,
there's a lot of non-paid hourly work
time.
It's a lot of like nighttime and stuff. How was that going?
And by that time I had been divorced, and so I was single mother, although I was very lucky. I had my dad and my mom nearby. So if it came, Dad, I got to stay late for this meeting. Can you get Eve to her piano lesson? He would always do that. Same with my mother. So I was lucky in that regard, but I didn't hold back. I see a lot of women and some men, pulling back because they feel like they're going to deprive their child of attention or something. And I never had that feeling. And I guess, again, it's maybe just confidence, but I felt like Eve would benefit from seeing her mother working very hard and achieving things. And yes, my travel was greatly increasing. I had been starting to go to international meetings by that point in time, invited here and there and staying late for meetings. If Steve or someone else would say, hey, Kris, you got a few minutes? I would always say yes. And then I might sneak back to my office and call my mom and say, hey, could you get Eve, up to school? She's got to, so I made things keep happening because I felt like it was going to ultimately be good for Eve. But I had that support. I wasn't like some women who have nobody else around. That's different. I didn't have that. But it turned out good, and Eve turned out well. And she's very successful, and she tells me that she saw me work. She actually came to the AUA meeting with me in April where I got an award. And she came. She took off her job. She came with me, and she did it in part to say to me, Mom, I recognize how hard you worked all these years. I saw it. I appreciated it. I learned from it. And, you're a role model. So sometimes I feel like I want to grab people and say, don't be afraid to continue doing what you do, even if you have kids, because I think your kids benefit from seeing a mom work hard and achieve things. Dads too, but especially women. And I still felt like I was part of her life. I still went to as many functions as I could. I didn't miss out. I did miss a couple of proms because I was at a meeting, but she understood.
Yeah, and I think you got it right in showing, what you were doing and what you were accomplishing. It was probably, you mentioned something the other day to me that I don't know, it just never occurred to me, but you mentioned something along the lines of, if you were married, it probably would have held you back from becoming and doing and everything. Like you said, the travel. I mean, you've been to like every country around the world at this point.
Ton of countries. Right? Yeah, I do feel that way. Did I say that?
Yes, you did.
I guess I'm one who likes being single, but I think I would have been, I think I'm a better mother, and I was a better mother because I was single, and I think I'm a better scientist and I think I accomplished more. And I don't mean to say that it's, that being married would have, taken up too much time, or that I don't know. I never missed being married.
You don't need to figure it out.
I guess not.
You know it, right?
But I think most people are not happy being alone, although I'm not alone. I mean, I have friends. I have lots of, things going on, but that again is just maybe a strength or a confidence that I had, that I knew I could do it on my own. But I actually don't think I would have been as good otherwise.
I think it's an important point for, people to know or hear that not everybody's the same.
And that's why we should be embracing all the, differences. There's different types of being a, mother and a father. There's different types of being, families and stuff. It's all good.
Yeah.
If it works for you.
It's whatever. Yeah. That's just it.
Like, it works for you that you have 2 doctors in the family. I don't know how you do that.
Sometimes I don't know either.
That just seems to me like that's crazy.
Yeah. It's chaos. And I've mentioned in another episode, if you don't look back at your life and say, how did I do that? You probably didn't push yourself far enough.
Agreed.
At some point.
I totally agree with you.
So there's another part I want to get into here. So because after I was here, I don't know how many years. It was maybe like 5 years, maybe a little bit more. But there's this big break that comes up, and you could call it a door that opens. I'm going to say you made the door. At this point, you've published, I don't know how many papers. It's, in the hundreds. As far as nutritional, prevention of kidney stones, you wrote the national guidelines for the AUA. And the bottom line is, you're it, meaning you're clearly the highest authority or expert level, whatever you want to call it. There's no real rating for this within Madison, Wisconsin, the Midwest, the United States of America. This is not debatable. And now across seas, every continent, the entire world of, I don't know what the billions are that we are at this point. No one, not one person would actually debate that someone might be better at this than you. I know you won't admit this, and you won't buy into this, right? But it's true. It's documented true. I mean, you can't possibly even get into PubMed and even make a comparison, an argument of any form. Someone might personally, be delusional and feel like they're whatever, but you know better. Anyway, and I know you won't admit to this. But then you also have this big jump in career. And I'm talking about the NIH here. Talk a little bit about that and your kind of thought process.
That was a real tough one.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sure. I remember talking to you about it. I didn't really want to make that jump. Yeah. I recognize, this is going to sound, I appreciate what you said. And I do think I'm one of the few, but that just goes to say that you get narrower and narrower as you get into your careers, and I know a lot about this thing, right? So in some ways that makes sense that there's not that many of us, because there's, you burrow down really deep into something, and who else is at that same burrow?
I get you. You create a smaller pool.
Yeah.
And, in some ways, if I say like, okay, I do diet prevention for cysteine stone formers, and, there's like 20 per state or whatever it is, that's fine. But you're doing diet prevention for all stones, 15% of the population in the country at least, the world or whatever, probably more. Like, this is a big topic to be the master of.
Well, and part of that success has been that I never wanted to completely give up the clinical work. So I'm 100% scientist in the Department of Urology. And then I work above and beyond that for to keep a small clinical practice with University Hospital. And that's always been what I did. And partly I did it because I needed the extra money when I was single mother, but also because I never wanted to give up the clinical, because I felt like to be just a scientist, not that that's bad, but that I needed to be a clinician scientist, that I needed that clinical, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a week to keep me sharp and to keep me smart and to keep me focused on translational clinical research.
I'll add one more thing to that. It gives you a certain validation, right? So when you're presenting something, talking about, and you're referring back to the patients you actually saw, people listen differently, right?
And I think
they can't dismiss you as, oh, you don't know what it's like to actually talk to patients.
And I think that's this, to the extent that I've had the success that you say I have, it's because of that, in large part, because I work really hard. I probably work 70 hours a week. And that's not just, it's a normal week. And that's because I'm writing notes, because my notes, I can't not write a detailed note. I spend extra time on that. But so that was really hard when I got this opportunity to pilot a coordinating center. The NIDDK came to me and said, will you be the person that pilots this coordinating center concept that we have? No one's ever done this. And it was to step away from my own research somewhat. It was to play less of a role in the department as a scientist. And I went to Steve Nakata and I said, look, I got this opportunity and it sounds great, but I don't really want to do it. And he said, Kris, you should do it. And I said, but why are you telling me this? Does that mean you don't want me to be a scientist with you anymore? He's still my closest, collaborator in many regards. And he said, no, that's obviously you still be in the department. But he said, this is a golden opportunity. He may have even referred to it as a door. And he gave me kind of an offer I couldn't refuse. He said, do it. They want you to do this. They see something in you. I see something in you. I think there are skills here that you could bring to bear that are unique. And he said, if you don't like it, you quit it and we'll just go back to the way it was.
So this was like, where I'll give him the most credit, right? I'm going to say, you created the door. He made it revolve. If you chose to use it as a revolving
I wouldn't have
door.
done it had he not said that. Had he not said, do it, Kris, I wouldn't have done it. So he said, do it. And then I did it. And it turned out, after 2 years of piloting it, they announced an RFA, request for applications, which means they had already decided. It's different from a notice of award or an announcement of an award. They do just like a funding opportunity announcement. That means they want to fund applications that are good. If they do an RFA, it means they're going to fund an application. It better be good, but they're good. They have the money for it already. So it was like a done deal. So I had to apply, but they said, we know it's working. You're doing great. We want you to apply. It was competitive. So I knew I was going to get some competition, but I got it. And so that was my first 5 years. It's just ending now, July 1st. I got a renewal notice. I just found out I got it. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing happens and I get the money to do another 5 years. But it turned out that was somehow I found out that I was good at that. Like, I had skills that I didn't know I had. And now I'm like, I can't imagine not doing it. Still doing a little research. Still got the magnesium thing that we're doing. I'm still doing some scientific stuff for the department, but most of my effort is being paid for on this grant. And most of my work, therefore, is on that. So it's coordinating, getting to know a lot more different investigators in the urology space around the country and creating opportunities for them to succeed. It turns out I like that. There I am again, creating opportunities, creating platforms for them to collaborate with each other, giving them ideas for things that they could be doing to enhance their visibility in the community, in the research field. So that's my new sort of focus.
Officially, nationally, recognized as being in charge, and they're willing to support you financially, not just talk, right?
Yes.
In this way, these are like really big validations of who you are and what people see you are as. I'm going to talk a little bit about the rock, right? So research on calculus kinetics. It's kind of this, very exclusive small group of all of the original people who've gotten into this work, meaning about kidney stones, whether it's urologist or nephrologist. I don't know if there's another dietitian that's a member. No. So you're the only dietitian who's there as a member. And more recently, you're president.
Yep.
President of a society of mainly nephrologists and urologists, and certainly founded that way by all of the people who wrote the original papers and the original textbooks and have the biggest egos, bigger than the surgeons that Ali is talking about. And here you are as president of this society, and you're a dietitian slash PhD, and no one is even flinching or questioning that.
Yeah, I'm totally very lucky. I think about that all the time. How is it that people actually listen to what I say? Because I am, more of a dietitian than a scientist in many regards. Certainly not a basic scientist, as many of those members are, those esteemed members, and nephrologists and urologists, you're right. I always wonder why people listen to what I say. But I've had this background in the Department of Urology where I learned that I could be respected. And I learned that I should have confidence in what I know. And I rode some coattails. Had Steve Nakata not opened, the doors for me or helped other urologists be encouraging them to accept me, I wouldn't have been here. So, but then, as it turns out that there was a role for me to play. And I've been on the executive committee now for almost 10 years because I was secretary treasurer for 5 years and then president-elect, president, and now immediate past president. Been a long road. But I feel I've contributed appreciably to the executive committee, to the society, and I am rewarded, by people saying, that they like what has changed and what has gone on. So I think we're returning to our roots a little bit, which everybody's really happy about.
Yeah. So you're going to say you rode some, coat.
Yeah, I did.
Tail. I'm going to say those coats didn't have tails. Sewed the tails on them, and then you wrote them.
Okay.
Because I think you're understating, how these things actually played out. Because, you had to make those coats rideable. Let's put it that way. But so here you are. You're nationally, internationally renowned. You have many options of what you could do with your career, this, that, and the other. You're also, clinically, you have independent clinics. Where you're seeing patients, you're telling them.
Well, that's because of you. Because I can only do that because of you.
But this is again, it's kind of the reoccurring theme where I feel like
it's symbiotic.
Yeah, but you created that.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm going to take anyone else?
I created you.
Anyone else?
No, that's what I'm saying. I know you would not. And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. And you're practicing clinically pretty much independent. Obviously, we discuss a lot of things, back and forth.
It's a high level. I agree.
Because, I joke around with our patients and stuff, and I say, 16 years, we share the same brain. We just, it's just a matter of who can write whatever at this point.
I have learned to do nephrology speak.
Yeah, that's just it. So you're doing that. You've got the research angle. You could delve in different angles, wherever you want. So this is the career you've built where you're getting the clinical medicine and the exposure and helping people at the highest level, right? It's going back to, I didn't want to be a doctor.
And here I am hanging around them.
You're being one.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's interesting. Like, sort of different routes, but you're still fulfilling the things you wanted to fill in your life. Right?
I definitely carved out something unique. And some other dietitians asked me, how can I do what you did? And, no two careers are the same exactly. Mine sure is different than others. And I did stitch some things together and create a very unique position. I don't know of I know other PhD RDs, but I don't know of anyone else who's doing exactly what I'm doing with the, involvement in various associations and societies. Last night I was on a meeting with people planning the International Urolithiasis Society meeting in 2026. I got to talk to you about that. But it was an international meeting, nephrologists, David Goldfarb was there. It's unique for sure. But it's also where I derive, I think, the greatest pleasure. I mean, I did not know it was going to turn out this way, but because of what I've been able to achieve now, I'm accepted. People want me on planning committees. People invite me to be part of, a meeting, a planning committee or an association, like the Rock Society. And now another society, the Society for Basic Urologic Research. So I'm getting more, even exposed to more people, which it turns out I really like. I really like the science, and I really like learning the interdisciplinary part of it. If it was all just dietetics, no. If it was all nephrology, no. It's that interdisciplinary stuff. I think that's what really turns me on, and which is why I like this coordinating center job, because you take one problem, but you got people coming at it from all these different angles, and now you see the picture. It's like that old thing where they give you, like, one person they give a picture of an elephant ear and someone else the tail, and they don't know what they're looking at until they all put it together. It's like that almost every day. You know, it's like, it's very exciting, and not just kidney stones anymore, although that's my love, but, you know, other things are similarly approached.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not like, if you had stumbled onto that in the beginning, it doesn't work, right? It's the time and
it's a progression
when you get there.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you're doing it too. I mean, I see you and I see, you know, others that I've followed over time. There's a progression to how you are becoming. Someday you'll be president of the Rock Society, for example. I think you will. I think that's a no-brainer. Yeah. So
we'll see.
You're one of the, you know, it's becoming more, there's fewer and fewer nephrologists. So we really need that nephrologist voice and that perspective. And
yeah, it's definitely been a lot of fun. I feel very fortunate in the people I've been surrounded with and encountered, and being here. I mean, Steve, you, Dr. Steele before left, Rieselbach, you know, all of these people that I've happened to stumble upon and have made a career out of it. So I've been very fortunate too, and I think we all just worked out to fit really well with each other.
Part of it is this place, and it's not just UW Madison, it's, I think, academia in general. There is more room to foster those kinds of relationships and that sort of mutual, you know, respect for learning and knowledge. I've never worked in private practice. I don't know if that's the case there, but I don't think it is. Yeah. And that's something, if you're, you know, going to go into this field, I think that's a decision that one has to make usually, is, do I do private? I see our residents doing that. Are they going to do private or academia? Some of it's what's available. Some of it is how much money can be made, you know, whatever turns you on, I guess. But I knew I could make more money. I could make more money as a private dietitian. Yeah. I get calls from patients all over the world and emails. Just answered one yesterday. And I could make a lot of money in private practice, but I don't want to do that. I think I would hate it.
Well, imagine every decision you make and everything you do, because if you're part of a group, you know, you're wasting time if you're not creating income or money, right? So all your decisions should be around that. That's a different life.
It's a different mentality.
For some people, it might be the right way. Maybe you retire earlier because you made more money. You know?
And you can practice good medicine, I guess, and those things. I just am so biased in the academic setting. You know, I think this is where, and I know it's not where the, you know, private practitioners can be fabulous providers, but it's this, if you're a brainy person, or if you're motivated by learning and stuff that we've been talking about for the last hour or so, it's really the place to be.
I hear you.
You could make a lot more money in private practice. Yeah. You know that.
Yep.
What keeps you here?
You know, again, it's kind of, if you're in that position where you have like a 2-physician household, you don't necessarily have the same demands, right? Yeah. So versus like, oh, you got to make more money and just work, this, that, and the other. But
so there's that consideration for sure.
Yeah. And I look at it as like, well, this is what I enjoy doing. You know, people say, hey, would you do it again? Like, yeah, I absolutely would. I can't even imagine doing something else. And not everybody could really say that and believe it. And I can see myself like the same old guys we've been talking about, right?
Yeah, I can see you that way too.
Doing it till they're in their 70s,
as
right?
Yeah.
Maybe cutting back, you know, not doing the overnight calls and all that other stuff.
Training the next generation.
Like, yeah, this is what I enjoy doing. You know, clinic is my happy space. We said you can't enjoy everything you do, but you know, for me, talking to these patients in clinic and like, this is my happy space.
Yeah, you're really good at it.
This is where I, you know, feel good, enjoy it, whatever it is. It could be, you know, after a bad day, like that's where I want to be.